Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Given to temptation, pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about the first hip-hop artist to lose their life. Now, back in 1987, when I was in junior high school and I was 13 years old, we lost DJ Scott LaRock, also known as Scott Monroe Sterling. Now, DJ Scott LaRock, before he came into music, aspired to be a basketball player, and he went to Castleton State College in Vermont, where he graduated with a degree in 1984. And since he couldn't become a NBA player, your Scott Sterling decided to start working as a social worker not too far from where I used to live on 166th Street at the Franklin Armory Men's Shelter by day, and at night he spun records at a hip-hop hotspot, the Broadway Repertoire Theater. So your Scott LaRock came from a background that was headed towards success. Unfortunately, he wound up losing his life due to some dysfunctional beta male behavior, like I described in my book, The Man Crisis. Now, your Scott LaRock was a guy who tried to do things peacefully and through things like conflict resolution, and he was trying to resolve a conflict going on between one of the members of Boogie Down Productions and some people in the neighborhood. Now, according to reports, one of the members of Boogie Down Productions, D Nice, who was a young teenage boy, he had been assaulted by a group of men who were upset that he was talking to one of their ex-girlfriends. Now, your Scott LaRock was in Manhattan at the time, and D Nice called him up from Manhattan and a group of others to come to defuse the situation. Unfortunately, as they were trying to go out here and defuse the situation, one of the members of the BDP crew got into it with some people on the street, and then after this guy RoboCop allegedly body slammed one of these individuals, this led to a further escalation. And as these individuals from BDP Productions were trying to drive around to resolve this conflict, somebody shot at them from the rooftop of one of the projects here in the Bronx. And Scott LaRock was hit with a bullet, and he hit his head on the dashboard, and he thought nothing was wrong because he had just thought he had only hit his head on the dashboard. Unfortunately, what had happened was he had been shot in the back of the head, and he didn't know it until it was too late. And then they got him to Lincoln Hospital. Unfortunately, they couldn't save him on the operating table, and sadly, Scott LaRock wound up passing away and became the first person to lose their life in hip-hop. And it was a sad and unnecessarily tragic loss, because what was happening here was we had a group of individuals who assaulted D Nice, a teenage boy, over an ex-girlfriend. When I think about that whole situation, it's absolutely ridiculous. Unfortunately, that was the kind of danger young black men wound up in during the 80s, because you had a lot of insecure beta males out here, and these insecure beta males, they would get upset even if somebody was talking to an ex, because these guys, they would be jealous of that other man, and they were probably really jealous because D Nice was a member of Boogie Down Productions, and it looked like this girl who he was talking to was about to get with somebody better than the guy who she previously was involved with. And because it looked like she was getting involved with a guy who was going to be better than who he was, that's when this guy's anger got the better of him and his jealousy got the better of him, and they decided to go and assault D Nice. Now, your D Nice, he was probably, again, a teenager. He didn't know what was really going on, and he went to go get people to try to help him out. And again, Boogie Down Productions was never a violent crew.
even though they did their first album, Criminal Minded, it was all about teaching about how these criminal behaviors were detrimental to black people. And what they were trying to do, they were trying to squash whatever issue they were having with whoever assaulted D Nice. Unfortunately, because they had a guy in the group, the guy they call RoboCop, who assaulted another individual, things wound up escalating and they could not resolve the conflict. And sadly, one of the most educated members of the Boogie Down Productions, Scott LaRock, wound up losing his life. Now, when Scott LaRock lost his life, he was a father and he had a child, and that son grew up without a father. And that was one of the other sad parts of this case, is that Scott LaRock's son, I think he had two children, they wound up growing up without their dad. Now, again, your Scott LaRock was a very conscientious and responsible young man, and he was looking to go out here and build a life for himself. Unfortunately, because he was living in the South Bronx and had to deal with a lot of the dysfunctional males around him, he wound up losing his life because people could not go out here and deal with their insecurities regarding the attention a guy was getting over a woman, and they could not deal with their feelings regarding a girl paying attention to another guy. Now, when I look at that again, that situation again, it's something that I know happened all the time here in the Bronx, and that's one of the reasons why I try to avoid dealing with a lot of women and teenage girls, because they would be getting involved with these kind of guys who were very insecure, very emotional, and these guys would start at the drop of a hat if you looked at a certain girl, and these guys would want to go out here and want to fight, or they would want to go out here and pull a weapon on you because they were feeling insecure about the idea of somebody talking to someone. And it's really, really mind-boggling, but that's the way it was back then. Even an ex could go out here and trigger one of these guys, and it could put you in a situation where your life was in jeopardy. And it's mind-boggling because, again, when you think about it, an ex-girlfriend is somebody who you have charged to the game, you have put in the rear-view mirror. But these guys, because they're so insecure, they want to be the man, they want to be the big wheel, and because they have these feelings of inadequacy, they go out here and they want to go out here and hurt anybody who is out here and getting attention that they believe they should get. That's what the whole situation was. Sadly, as related to the tragic death of Scott LaRock, it was all over some guys who just did not have good critical thinking skills, good conflict resolution skills, or good problem solving skills, or the ability to navigate through their emotions. And sadly, this started the whole thing with people in the hip hop game losing their lives. And what's even sadder is that almost 40 plus years ago, later, your Scott LaRock still does not have justice. Now, your Scott LaRock, after his passing, they still tried to go out here and try to find those who did this murder and bring them to justice. Unfortunately, they were never able to find who did shoot from that rooftop and struck the side and top of the Jeep that your Scott LaRock and his manager and many others were riding around in. And because they could not go out here and find who that person was, what happened was they did arrest and charge two men as related to the murder, but they were acquitted at trial. So we will never know who actually was the person who pulled the weapon and went out here and took the life of one of hip-hop's most promising DJs and music producers, Scott LaRock. And that's one of the sad stories as related to hip-hop, that with DJ Scott LaRock. He was the first person to sadly die, and over the last 35 plus years, as hip-hop has gone on to become mainstream, what has happened is we have seen many other black men sadly follow in Scott LaRock's tragic footsteps, and lose their lives, all because either they got into a beef or they wound up getting into some drama, like the late Biggie Smalls and the late Tupac Shakur and some other rappers who have just passed away just recently. But what's sad is that we lose the lives of all of these young black men, and it's just, when you think about it, many of these men, they had not even reached 30 years old, because Scott LaRock, again, was 25 years old when he lost his life, and he, again, left behind a son and a family. But many of these other young men who I've seen lose their life over the last couple of years, these men they didn't even get a chance to start a family. They didn't even get a chance to start moving their lives forward. Some had even just written their first record contract. And it's one of those things that makes me think about, how life can be here one minute and the next it's gone. And it also makes me think about the whole case of the crab in a bucket syndrome, because one of the things that I believe led to the whole issue with D-Nice getting into it with those guys at the place was the whole thing about these crab in a bucket black males, because a lot of black males, whenever they see another black male who has success, they start to get angry and they want to bring that black person down. And that's what they try to do here with D-Nice by assaulting him, and then they did it by taking the life of Scott LaRock. And that whole incident with Scott LaRock that really made it where guys like KRS-One started to really rethink their whole approach to things, because as they were out here rapping and making their music, they realized that their music needed to have a message. And that's why your KRS-One went out here and started talking about things like the Stop the Violence movement and made classic records like Self-Destruction, because he started to see that the music needed to have a message to deal with those in our community who wanted to be these crabs in a barrel and wanted to go out here and take the life or attack another man over something as small as the attention of a woman. He wanted black men to understand that black on black violence, this is the thing that's really tearing up our communities, and this black on black violence, this is the kind of stuff that was doing damage to black people in the 80s. During the 80s, we had the crack epidemic going on, and we also had these brothers out here who were in their feelings about a girl paying attention to another guy, and they would get to the point where they wanted to go out here and either take a box cutter to a guy, or they wanted to go out here and take a 9 to a guy, or one of these guns out here, all because the guy was getting attention because the girl considered him to be cute. And a lot of guys, they wound up in these kind of dangerous situations, and I know all about them because as the 80s went on, I ran into these kind of emotional guys, and these guys, again, they don't really care about anybody's life. It's all about their feelings, and that's sadly the reason why Scott LaRock is not with us today, all because we had a group of males who were not ready to become men, and these men in crisis wound up destroying the lives of some of the great black men who could have gone on to further greatness. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can donate to my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to learn more about why guys like those who murdered Scott LaRock go out here and participate in their spectrum of violent behaviors, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also pick up The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller.